Bombings in Central Beirut as Israeli air raids caused dozens of deaths and mass displacement. Lebanon is being drawn ever deeper into Israel's war with its regional enemies, culminating in the deadliest attack yet on the capital. With UN peacekeepers targeted and the Israeli ground invasion expanding, how much more can Lebanon withstand? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Lebanon. Israel has invaded Lebanon 6 times in the past 50 years. What it's achieved via those incursions is up for debate. In the 80s and 90s, they were determined to destroy PLO units based there. Now they're struggling to defeat an arguably more powerful enemy in the form of Hezbollah. Meanwhile, UN troops charged with keeping the South Lebanon border area demilitarized have come under Israeli fire, leaving 2 peacekeepers injured. Israel says Hezbollah is using those UNIFIL forces as human shields, just as it claims Hamas is using tens of thousands of civilians the same way. So are there any red lines, or will Lebanon really be the next Gaza? Here's a look.
It's a dangerous phase in the long conflict between Israel and Lebanon. On Thursday, Israel issued evacuation warnings for Beirut's southern suburbs and warned Lebanese civilians not to return to their homes in the south. Millions have been internally displaced in Lebanon as Israel continues hundreds of airstrikes throughout the country. Tel Aviv initially said its military operations would be limited in scope. But with ground incursions in the past weeks, it seems to have expanded its military invasion of Hezbollah-controlled territories in southern Lebanon.
The strike wasn't just powerful. How should I describe it to you? We lived through the war and the previous wars. It was not like what we're seeing and hearing now. May God ease our minds and protect us and protect this country. What more can we say?
Hezbollah, the group which promised to protect the country from Israel when gaining political prominence in Lebanon, has continued to fire barrages of rockets into northern Israel, but has been weakened. More than a dozen top Hezbollah commanders have been killed in Israeli attacks and assassinations, including Hassan Nasrallah, the veteran Secretary General of the group.
We've degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself, and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of his replacement. Today, Hezbollah is weaker than it's been for many, many years.
But neither the group nor other Iran-backed militias in the region, known as the Axis of Resistance, are about to disappear. With its latest invasion, Israel may become entangled in an expanding war without achieving any of its stated objectives. Previous Israeli invasions of Lebanon did not turn out as planned. In 1978, Israel invaded southern Lebanon in what they say was in response to an attack by Palestinian resistance groups. The fighting killed over 1,200 Lebanese people and did not solve any of its security concerns along the northern border. 4 years later, in June 1982, Israel attacked Lebanon from the air, sea, and land, targeting the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The full-scale invasion shattered Beirut and killed nearly 30,000 people, dismantling the PLO's presence in Lebanon, but resulted in the formation of an Iranian-backed adversary, Hezbollah, to resist the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. And in 2006, just 6 years after withdrawing its forces from Lebanon, Israel bombed Beirut and southern Lebanon again, this time attacking Hezbollah. More than 100 Israeli soldiers were killed, and the month-long war is largely seen as a victory for the group. Now, after over a year of Israel's unrelenting attacks in Gaza, their so-called limited, localized, and targeted invasion of Lebanon is stoking fears of a larger regional and broader war.
But if things continue as they are, we risk seeing a conflagration that could dwarf even the devastation and suffering witnessed so far. It's not too late to avoid such folly. There is still room for diplomacy which must be used without delay.
So far, diplomatic efforts have not calmed the escalation. Israel's long-term strategy seems unclear. And also caught in the fog of war is the civilian cost of Israel's wars on multiple fronts, a breakdown in Gaza ceasefire talks, and the risk of a devastating regional conflict, inching ever closer.
Well, joining me now to discuss the situation in Lebanon are from Beirut, founding director of the policy initiative, Sami Atallah. From Paris, global fellow with the Wilson Center's Middle East program, Joe Macaron. And from Boston, distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut, Rami Khouri. Thanks all so much for being with me. Sami, I'll begin with you to get a better idea of how things are feeling in Beirut right now. We know Lebanese people are known for their resilience. They've experienced almost every type of disaster, yet they continue to thrive. But now it sounds like even in safe areas where everyone could at least try to continue with a normal life, this war is now consuming them too. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. The situation is actually catastrophic in Lebanon. So far, we've got 2,000 people dead, 10,000 injured, 52,000 residential and commercial units destroyed, more than 1.2 million people displaced. This comes atop of more than 4 years of financial crisis, port explosion, Corona, and what have you. But this one, the Israeli aggression and rampage on Lebanon, it's a killing machine. It's killing people, literally, left, right, and center. And no one is actually safe. So we're in a very terrible situation. People are suffering, and there is no sort of, as we say, room or space that this is going to end anytime soon. So people are really concerned and are really worried about this. And as you very well know, the ground invasion hasn't even started already. So people are very, very tense, I should say that.
I mean, do you think, though, this is truly different from their previous experience with other Israeli invasions, another 6 and 50 years and counting, it seems now? Is this truly different?
Well, so far what we're seeing, and from reading the intentions of the Israeli government, yes, now they want to eliminate Hezbollah. Prior to this invasion or incursion, when it started 2 weeks ago, they were just wanted to bring their settlers back home in the north of Israel. We see that the plan has changed. And Netanyahu's government is actually becoming much more aggressive now and decided that it actually wants to invade Lebanon and eliminate Hezbollah. Now, this is the plan. And so far, they are actually proceeding or executing the plan. And whether the plan works or not, that's a very different story, because it's all going to be decided in the battlefield. But in the meantime, people are dying, are being displaced, their future is getting ruined, because right now, this is where we are with the Israeli grand plan. And Israel has had these grand plans for the longest time. They invaded Lebanon before in 78, in 82, they had in 96, in 2006.
Right.
And you know what? Their plans failed. And in fact, Lebanon became, or South Lebanon particularly, became the graveyard of Israeli soldiers.
Yeah.
So we're going to see this time, and I think this time is going to be more brutal, frankly, because Hezbollah, unlike the PLO in 1982, unlike Hezbollah in 2006, they seem to be much more armed and ready. And we see that in the battlefield. They've been trying to penetrate or invade Lebanon in the last 8 days, and they haven't done so. And they've actually suffered several casualties. I think in total 250 between injured and killed Israeli soldiers. So this is going to be a very intense battle, in my opinion.
Of course, Joe, I mean, Israel says that Hezbollah is being beaten back. Do you think they are? Where does Hezbollah really stand? And I mean, is Hezbollah itself interested in a ceasefire?
I mean, the first question, there's a shock and awe, I think, from the Israeli side by having all the walkie-talkie and the people attack, and then the eradication, basically, of the successor and the Secretary General and his potential successor. So yeah, Nasrallah is there, but I don't think Hezbollah is also. So they have a structure. They are trying to adapt. They have a weaker leadership now, collective one. They had a big blow to their communication system, and they have the fighters on the ground who have some flexibility and basically they don't need to have instructions every day. But it's not only about the battlefield. I think it's Hezbollah has to adapt somehow to all these changes now, whether in rhetoric or in policies. We have seen some signals they are ready to talk. Whether from the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah now or from the Lebanese government. I think they underestimated how the Israeli would react. And now they have, I think, a responsibility not to go into suicide mission and try to basically also try to protect their constituents, the national interests of the country, of looking of how much it's worth it to go far in the support front for Gaza. So I think they have a lot of potential that they have to choose their battles, I think.
Okay.
This is different than 2006. The full-blown attack is different. The situation in Lebanon is different in 2006. So
right.
I think they have a lot of questions.
In 2006, Lebanon was arguably in a position of strength as a country. It's quite different
yes,
now.
I mean,
yeah. But let me get to...
situation was better.
Exactly.
There was international support. There were a million of factors that doesn't exist now.
Right. Let me get to Rami then, because Rami, now that Central Beirut is actually being attacked, I mean, do the Lebanese people want Hezbollah to back down, stop firing at Israel, stop escalating? Is that how the majority of them see it? Or are they fed up with Israel's never-ending cycle kind of intimidation of Lebanon and would rather see a military end to this war?
You know, it's a variety of all of these sentiments, and it changes day by day depending on what's happening on the ground and how badly people are suffering, how viciously Israel is attacking, and how lackadaisically the international community is responding. The Lebanese would definitely like Israel not to keep attacking them and attacking the airport and closing down society, as it has done since the 1960s. It started in the late 60s, attacking the airport and other things. Half the Lebanese like Hezbollah, the other half don't like it. They think it's an Iranian intrusion into their national politics, but they like it because it drove the Israelis out of South Lebanon. And so it's a very mixed emotion that Lebanese have to Hezbollah. But they definitely don't want the Israelis to stay there permanently. The Israelis tried years ago to form a link with some of the right-wing Christian Lebanese forces to have them work together, but that didn't last very long. The problem for the Lebanese and for most people around Israel in the Arab world is that the Israelis have unleashed all of their technological military power. They've used it indiscriminately against civilians, against infrastructure, against any target that they think is going to make the Lebanese suffer more and give up and surrender. The problem is they've tried that 7, 8, 9 times, as Sami said, and it just doesn't work.
Right.
It's not because Lebanese are special, it's because human nature doesn't accept subjugation.
But I guess, the question though now, and Sami, let me come back to you on several fronts. I mean, this feels like a continuation of a constant cycle of violence that is only ever solved through ceasefires that are finally negotiated but then completely fall apart. In the meantime, though, the action being taken by Israel means that they are actually being accused directly of firing on UNIFIL troops, on UN peacekeeping forces. So now, Sami, does the UN even command any respect from Israel? And is that changing the dynamics internationally in what's happening in this war?
You know, absolutely, you're right. They're actually attacking the UN, and in fact, the UN or the countries that were attacked, including Italy, they've actually asked for an apology, and they regretted severely what the Israelis are doing. Now, actually, I think Israel doesn't care, and that's the sad part. And as long as it's protected by the United States, it's doing whatever it wants. In fact, it committed a genocide. 42,000 Gazans, Palestinians, were killed in front of our own eyes, right? More than 100,000 injured and 30,000 missing, right? And you know what? They didn't change anything. In fact, not only the US, also European countries, the French, the Germans, right? The Italians, the Romanians, they send weapons to Israel. So what are they actually saying to Israel? We support you. Do whatever you want to do. So this is really the saddest part, because the international order, in fact, it collapsed in front of our own eyes. And actually, it took a massacre or a genocide in Gaza to unmask the hypocrisy of Western European powers. Now, in addition to that, I'd like to say that Israel has violated, and as Rami said, in the 60s, but let me give you just some numbers. From 2007 to 2022, right? 22,000 flights, Israeli flights over Lebanon, in violation of Lebanese sovereignty. That means every single day, on average, there are 4 flights from Israel, whether drones or jets, collecting data or threatening Lebanese and terrorizing them every single day for the last 15 days. And when this war started, by the way, let's just remember on October 8th, when Hezbollah launched 3 missiles against Israel in response to Gaza, you know, those 3 missiles were targeted to Shaba farms. Shaba farms are Lebanese territories occupied by Israel. So legally, what Hezbollah did is legal, in fact. You know what did Israeli retaliate? On the same day, it actually launched 8 missiles. Now, in the first week, if you just add all the missiles that Hezbollah fired at Israel in the first week, from October 8 to October 15, it launched 8 missiles. You know what the Israelis launched during the same week in response? 72 missiles.
Yeah, I mean, there's so
9
much
times.
disproportionality
Absolutely.
on most fronts in this conflict. But let me come to Joe quickly, because yes, now we see this war engulfing Lebanon, which we're discussing right now. And the next question is what Israel will do in response to Iran, and how that might affect the situation as well in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Where do you see that going?
I think whatever will happen between Israel and Iran, and also between the US and Israel, will impact a lot of what's happening in Lebanon now. If the US will manage to basically lower the tension, have an Israeli reaction that basically Iranian can live with, can fit in the rhetoric that they had a strike and everything is good, I think this will start to have an impact. The only way, I think, coming out for potential any ceasefire is to have an indirect talks between the Americans and the Iranians. Netanyahu is now out of control. There's no debate about this. He doesn't see any constraint, whether at home or abroad. So the issue is how the party is going to deal with him. They're going to confront him. They're going to try to basically cope with that until the US election come, and then we have maybe another dynamic moving forward. So yes, I think the Lebanon is waiting somehow, not waiting, but the impact on Lebanon will highly depend on how the Israeli will respond to the Iranian in the coming days or weeks.
So Rami, where do you see the next potential front opening when it comes to Iran, and how the spillover might affect Lebanon?
Well, what's happening is that Israel is now using military force against all fronts at the same time: Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Iran, and they probably will Syria. They've been attacking on and off. So Israel is a runaway killing machine that is directly and usually enthusiastically supported by the Western powers, especially the United States, Great Britain, and Germany. And this is, you know, as Sami also mentioned, this is really the first collective collapse of the international order that was set up after World War II in response to the genocide against the Jewish people in Europe to protect the people all over the world with certain human rights regulations and rules of war and things of that nature. And Israel has now thrown all of that out the window in a direct challenge to the international order. They don't care about the UN resolutions. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about Geneva Conventions, ICC, ICJ. They basically say, we're doing what we want to do. Come and stop us. Nobody is stopping them, and most people are helping them. So this is a huge moment of moral reflection for the world, the Western world especially. Most of the global South is supporting the Palestinians and the Lebanese. So this is a really historic moment when the entire world is being judged. And so far, the judgment of the West is that Israel should kill as much as it wants, and the people of the South, the indigenous people in Lebanon, Palestine, elsewhere, have no rights whatsoever. So Iran is part of this now. Iran's only major success of the Iranian Revolution of '79 outside Iran was Hezbollah in Lebanon, creating this very significant force. We're seeing now how powerful Hezbollah really is. It took a hit 3 weeks ago, but we have to wait and see its capabilities. And right now it's showing strong capabilities on the ground in the south, but this remains to be seen. Hamas, for a year, has been plummeted by the Israelis, and they're still fighting back and firing. So a lot of questions open-ended. We don't know the answer to a lot of them, but clearly it's going to keep expanding.
Sami, Israel has threatened specifically to make Lebanon the next Gaza. I mean, could Lebanon become the next Gaza? And could it spiral that far out of control? And you're sitting in Beirut right now. Are you scared?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it already has started. I mean, look at the numbers that I just said before. 52,000 residential and commercial units destroyed. 93% of them are in the south. I'm afraid that, in fact, the Gaza scenario is in place. Look at Dahi, which is Beirut. In fact, they've already destroyed neighborhoods within it, and it's already being emptied out because people are scared to go there. So that scenario is being implemented as we speak, and people are terrified. You should have seen people running for their lives, literally, because they get a message or a call from the Israeli army asking them to leave their buildings right away. What is that? That is terror, terrorism at its best. And yesterday even, they actually threw a missile at a residential, very dense residential neighborhood to kill so-called an Hezbollah officer, but they ended up killing 22 people and injuring many more.
Yeah.
So this terrorism is being enacted, and people are really scared to come to work, to send their kids to school. We're in a very catastrophic situation, and if the international community gives Israel the green light, which I think it has, because they're not talking about the ceasefire, because Hezbollah, because Netanyahu thinks it's gonna want to implement its plan and eliminate Hezbollah, which I think is going to be doubtful, and it's not going to be that easy, or as they claim. Meanwhile, they're going to kill and terrorize a lot of people, innocent civilians.
Right.
So when Bibi Netanyahu came to talk to the Lebanese, you know what he said? He said, look, if you don't get rid of Hezbollah, we will. It's basically telling us, here's a gun. Either you commit suicide and kill each other and have a civil war, or I'm going to come and kill you.
Yeah, and then in the meantime, Joe, final question, just a minute and a half left. Physically, where will the Lebanese people actually go? Will they just have to endure these assaults, or will we see a massive refugee crisis? Will they try to flee into Syria, which we have to remind our viewers does not have the best relations right now with Lebanon, especially given the feelings towards, Syrian refugees in Lebanon that some say haven't been treated very well. Where does this leave the people and their plight to just survive?
I think the people are living day by day now. Some Lebanese are going to Syria, as you mentioned. The rest are spread all over the country. We already have Syrian refugees. The government is not equipped to deal with this. It's barely equipped to dealing with the diplomatic crisis now. We already have a financial economic collapse. We have the Beirut port explosion. We don't have a president. There's a dysfunctional government that's acting as an NGO now instead of taking control of the country and the crisis. Yes, I mean, nobody was expecting this to happen. They didn't anticipate it, even though we saw Hamas political bureau chief in Iran. So I think, yeah, the government, whatever left in it should step up. They should elect a president even in the wartime, and basically try to have control of the situation, because we are in a different stage, a different dynamic now. And this gonna grow more and more, because people, the winter is coming. Yeah. People have to come back home. They will never come back home anytime soon. They need a year or two to destroy if the war finishes today or tomorrow. Right. So we have a big crisis. We don't have international aid to come and fly from the Gulf and other people and other countries. So I think it's a crucial moment, and a lot of political leaders should step up in this period.
We'll have to hope they do. Joe, unfortunately, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists so much for being with us. Our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.